for as long as I can remember, games have been such a big part of my life. From being an emotional outlet to connecting from people from all around the world. Creating my own game has always been something that intrigued me. If you're anything like me, the thought of coding and knowing what decimal point goes where, what verbiage to use to tell one thing to do something else, it's just too much. Until I came across a program that allowed me to simplify the entire experience, allowing me to code without having to do it to where it looks like the Matrix. Today we're talking about Clickteam Fusion. It is not the only one that allows you to do this, but it's the one that I've found a lot of success. Coming from somebody that knows nothing about coding and able to create a game within a couple of minutes. If you find any value in this video, enjoy the content, throw me a like. Helps out the channel a whole lot. This is the first video in a series of videos that help guide you in helping you understand this program that will allow you to create something amazing. I create content like this all the time, so consider subscribing to me so you don't miss a video. So when you first started up, you're greeted with this screen here. It asks you if you want to buy the extended version. You can do that. It's $100, but you can buy get the free version to try it. And the only thing that I've noticed that it doesn't offer is the ability to create a game and not have a watermark. So free version's fine, especially if you're not trying to sell your games, you're just trying to create something. But you'll have this taskbar over here on the very left-hand side where you can start a new application. You can open your application. They have tutorials as well, if I can get my words out. We're going to start with new application, and then you have the next screen you get to is a screen that just has essentially a thumbnail that shows you what you're working on. This is a frame, and for each level, you're going to call essentially a frame. The first thing that we're going to do here for today's video is discuss a menu screen or a title screen. That'll be the first thing that somebody opening up the program is going to notice and going to do and going to interact with. So the very first thing you want to do is double click into the thumbnail, which will open this here. It's just a plain sheet of paper. Now there's a couple things that you can do to make things a little bit easier. Up at the very top left, there is a way to show a grid if you want to show the grid for what it is. And you can also snap things to grid. So that's the next button that's over here. To snap it to the grid is just essentially you can only put it on areas that's associated with the red. Like you can't overlap any of the red. So that's very, very useful if you're trying to line things up. But it's not essential. It's not anything you have to worry about at this time. Matter of fact, the grid you don't even have to worry about. I normally don't until there's a need for it. Like I'll take it off so it's just not so daunting and in your face. But the first thing you want to do, you want to go to frame 1. That's where you're at. And you want to resize the frame. Now, you can keep it at the size that it's at now. It's at 640 and 480. But that's going to leave you with a very, very small... you can't make it full screen. Normal video games, full screen is... 1920 by 1080. So you're gonna, if you want a full screen game, you're gonna want to change this here. And once you do that, you'll see the size of this thing go huge, which you can, up at the very top here, you'll see a little, I can't, I'm using my cursor here. You'll see a little thing here that says 100%. That's where it's kind of zoomed in all the way. If you're doing something full screen, sometimes it's best to kind of scale back a little bit so you can see the entire frame. And you can center it here. What I found is that this right here is your field of view. So if you started a game, that's all it's going to show is just that little area right there. So what I do is I'm going to find out where it's at here. Here it is. Okay, where you see the little piece of paper to play button there. If you go down, you'll see a spot that says resize to screen size at start. So it's going to resize it so it's going to take the entire space here. Well, first thing that you want to do is, of course, add some kind of backdrop to everything. Essentially a graphic that you want to show up here. Now, one of the ways that you can do it is you can right-click and hit Insert Object and click on Backdrop. Now, when you do that, though, you're going to be given this just random backdrop here, which is it's customizable. You can edit it. You can go in here. You can make whatever you want and stretch it out for the screen. But for instance of this, I've created my own backdrop. Now, how I created it, I'm going to do a video here in the future about IBIS Paint is what I use in order to do it. To do it, you could click on the little file icon up here, and it'll pull up all your files, and you can do it that way. Or the easiest way I've found to do everything is if you already have the graphic, to go to the folder that you have the graphic in, which is this one here, and then drag and drop it directly on. Now, drag and drop, you still have to pick what you want it to be, but of course this is going to be your backdrop. So this is my game. No judgment, judgment-free zone here. Pirate's gonna get that booty. So that's the backdrop. Now, I want to discuss one little thing here that's going to be very crucial later on. The layers toolbar that's over here. If you go to the layers toolbar, you'll see that there's different layers you can use. Almost always what you're going to want to do is open up a second layer. And you're going to want to use this little lock tool here to lock this layer in place. That makes it so when you're working on layer 2, which is going to be where our buttons are, you can't move the image. See, if we had it here and we had it unlocked, if, say, we're trying to highlight something, we're going to end up moving the image off screen. So I'm going to undo that. And we're going to go back to the layers. We're going to lock it up. We're going to go into our layer 2. Now, on layer 2, this is where we're going to insert our buttons. Now, the buttons that I've already created. It is the new game and the options button. Now, I'm gonna have the options later on, where essentially you can select difficulties, things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and drag and drop our new game down here, and everything that is clickable or movable or interactable is active. That is the main one that you will use. Not as much backdrop as you would with this particular one. So I want to resize it. If you click on it, it will open up a window that's up here that you can resize it like, normally what you would do with an image. And you can bring it down to the size that you want it to be. Now, I think I'm going to go with new game over here with options over to the right. It might muddy it up a little bit, but this is for instance of showing you how this is done. So we're going to leave that there, and we're going to go in and get our options menu. Doing the same thing as we did before. Making it active. Now with this, you can see it's going to be very difficult to scale this down to make it match up. You can put it over top of it and try to match it up. I actually did a pretty good job there. But the way that you could do this the best way is if you click on new game, which is the first one that you put in there, it will actually tell you the size and the position. So it's 478 by 478. So I can click over on this one in the same area and change it to 478 and 478. And that will change it to the exact same size. I'm a stickler when it comes to making sure everything is in line. Now, same goes with the X and Y position, X, Y. Obviously, I want my Y dead on because I don't want it to be off by any, which we have it at 170 here. So we're going to go in the options here and change this from 177 to 170. And you'll see that it lines up perfectly. Now, the main thing that you want to notice when you start and run this, which you would go under Run, and you click either on Build and Run, or Application. Build and Run, what that'll do is it'll create a project name. So we're gonna call it Pirates. And you want to select a path. Now the path, I've already got a game folder already, so we're going to keep that as game. And then we're going to hit OK. And what it'll do is we got to allow access, of course. Why not? It's going to start this up here. Now, as you can see, I messed up. I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? One of the things that I had forgotten to do here is if you go under Application and you click on right here where it shows the window. The window here, you want to make sure you change the window size to 1920, 1080, or whatever window size you want to keep it. That is going to ensure that when you do test this game, it's going to show up as full screen and show you everything. And also, clicking on the option down here below on that same area where it says resize display to fill window would be the next thing to do. So that way, if you build and run, just like we did before, it's going to fill the window completely. Boom, it's full screen. We can't do anything. We can start a new game. There's nothing. There's no options. There's no nothing. It's just one big screen. That's it. So what we want to do now is to code in the easiest fashion possible. Their fashion, their way of doing it. To code, you would come up to the very top here where right underneath window, it's an event editor. They call it events. The event speaks to, like, if you click on something, something does something. What happens when you move your mouse over something? Does it do this? Does it do that? Okay, so, or if you click on something. So in this case, that's what we're doing. We're clicking. So what you want to do first is hit a new condition. And the new condition, you'll have a lot of icons here. Essentially, what you're wanting to do is whenever somebody clicks on a certain thing. So the certain thing you want them to click is the start button to go to the next frame. So if you click on this little thing that looks like a mouse and keyboard, it'll have the option for keyboard and for mouse. And you want to, of course, go to mouse. And when the user clicks on an object, because an object is any active thing that you have on your frame. So you click on that, and it's going to bring up this here where it asks you if it was left, middle, or right button click and single click. So left button and single click. And, of course, you want it to, if I can see what these sprites are, I'm pretty sure. Which brings me to my next thing here. Hold on. We're going to reverse here because this is really confusing because you can't tell what it says. So if you go into the actual frame itself and click on each individual thing here, you're going to want to rename it. That's going to be the easiest way to do this to where you're not confused. Because I just had confusion set there for sure. So instead of it being active in active 2, you're going to want to rename this guy new game. And then when it comes to the next one, you want to, of course, name that by options. And you'll find out here in a minute why that makes a lot of sense to do it that way. So let's click on new game. Let's make sure that that came up as the correct one. It says new game. That's good. All right, so let's click back in the events editor, and we're going to add a new condition, just like we were doing before, and click on the mouse when the user clicks on an object. Now, of course, left button and single click. We're going to now be able to see that it says a new game on it. So you can hover over top. It's going to say new game. It's going to say option. So I'm going to click new game. So when the left button is clicked on new game, what happens? Now this is your storybook where it looks like a chess thing on the very top. That's where you're going to go to switch through frames to do whole sorts of things. But if you right click this, you can select next frame. Next frame is going to be our first game, like our first level, which we're going to get to here momentarily. So now, again, we have no frames, so this is not going to work. Okay, so now that we have the new game, switching to the frame, you want to also have the other button to be active as well. So going into the condition, the same thing we did, repetition, it's always good. The mouse, when the user clicks on an object, single clicks, and clicks on option, we got to make it do something else. So what you could do, essentially, is you could jump to a specific frame where you have all the mapping of your options. So jumping to a frame, you don't have any other frames to choose from except for one. So we're going to leave it at that. We're going to come back to that once we have options all situated. But if we go to the application now and go back in here, if we try to attempt to run this and click on our, as soon as it loads up, our new game, it's not going to do anything. It's going to freeze up. The reason it's freezing up is because it doesn't have a frame to go to. It doesn't know the next step. All right, so what you want to do is you want to go into application where you have your thumbnail listed here, and you want to click on 2, which is going to add a brand new frame. Let's click into that frame here for a second, and then we're going to make sure the size is correct. It should automatically default to the size that you started with. But because we have nothing to add to this, we could change the background color just so that we can, for instance, be able to see how everything looks, to make sure that all this code is going correctly. So what we want to do is we want to go down here on the first tab where there's a check mark on the very side here. If you scroll down below the sizing, you'll see background color, and it'll say RGB. If you click on RGB, you can select whatever color you want. But let's make it yellow. It stands out. It's bright. It's in your face. Now we're going to go back to the application at this point because now we have a frame situated. And we can run a test on this to make sure our connections are working properly. So now we have our opening screen. If we click on new game, we're greeted with the yellow. The bright freaking yellow. So that's obviously not what's going to be the end result, what's going to be in this. We're going to have an actual level load up there. But for instance of making an options screen, first off, we're going to change the order of this stuff. And the reason for that is because you don't want to have your options to be your next, or to be the frame after your first frame, or else somebody's going to play a level and be entered into the options screen. So we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to change the color on this one to red, just so it's there. Let's go back to the application and let's rename these things here. Where it says title, you can click on the frame number that's up there. And this one I'm going to title options. So I'll know exactly what frame that is pertaining to. And frame 2 is going to be level 1. All right, so now that we've done the coding for this frame that's up here, frame 1, which we're going to change to start menu. Now that we've done that, obviously we've got it going to the next frame, which is options. We don't want that. We want to change this code so that when the user clicks on new game, it doesn't go to the next frame. We're going to delete that. And we're going to make it jump to a specific frame, which is level 1. Now we can keep this as we want, or we can just change this completely for options and make it go to options. So now, if we close out of this portion of it and go back in to build and run, we'll have our screen pulled up here. If we hit new game, we get yellow. Now we'll have to reload this because we have no way to go back. And if we click on options, we're red. So we know those frames work. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is how to change this here. Do you ever see games where you click on something or you hover over top of it and it gives you a notification that it's being pressed? That a lot of times, like I know for me, like I know like it's working properly. I don't know, it's weird. It's like something's hovering over it, it turns red, it does this, it does that. So here's what we're going to do that. To do that, we're going to insert a brand new game. We don't want to copy this. This is going to be an active one. Okay, now we want to resize this so it's the same size as this guy, which size we have is 48 by 48. So let's go ahead and click on that. Or not 48 by 48, 478, duh. 478 by 478. So 478 by 478. So it's the exact same size. Let's double click in on this one here and let's do something different to it. What are we going to add to this? Are we going to change the color? If we wanted to change the color of this, all we realistically have to do is use the fill button up here, and we can change this to, let's say, red. There we are. Good enough. We're going to leave it as that. I mean, you can go through and create a whole new thing. You can make a little etching mark in it, which, in matter of fact, you know what? Let's do that. Let's put a little like black little notification that you're selecting that game. I don't know if I like that so much. There we go. So this will be if you're highlighting over the new game, so you know that you're pressing or about to press new game. So we're going to hit OK on this, and this is going to be our second, which we want to line this up to be right over top of new game. We're going to want to make sure that we're right on, dead on with its position, which is 58 and 170. So we want to change that to 58 and 170. Boom. As you can see that it's situated right behind it, but we don't want that. We want that to be in the very front for reasons that you'll see in here in a second. So we want to go to that's why I'm on the background. Okay, so I did a very, very rookie move here. I inserted my new game in the background. So here's what we want to do here for this. We want to move this out of the way, unfortunately. And we want to take this new game and we want to paste it on the second frame, not the first, or not frame, the second layer, not the first layer. This one should still be locked. We shouldn't be able to move that. All right, so now that we've got that in the right frame, it should show up on the very, very top of it. So let's make sure we got our position correct, which is 58 and 170. We're going to change the new game to the same, 58 and 170. And new game is positioned directly over top of it. So it looks kind of funny, weird. It's like we changed everything, but we want to add code to this. What we want to do by going to the start menu and selecting the code is we want to add a new condition. We want to make it so that if the user goes with the mouse and highlights over it, mouse pointer over an object. So you want to click on your next one, which is the red one. And obviously we want to change that to new game click. I don't know. I'm just adding something just for instance to keep it there. So if the mouse is hovering over new game click, you want to make this over here is your objects at the very end over here. You want to right click that and you want to make visibility, make object reappear. Not, I almost said invisible. It was already invisible. So make object reappear. Okay. So also when it's hovering over I am supposed to make that new game. So it's hovering over new game. My apologies. It's going to make that reappear, and we're going to make the new game visibility invisible. So what that's going to do is going to make it so when he highlights, or she, when whoever highlights over new game, it's going to make your new game invisible, and it's going to make the red new game visible. And now, of course, because we got user clicks left button on new game, we don't want him to click new game. We don't want him or her to click that. We want him or her to click the red new game, because that's going to start everything and it's going to move to the next frame. So if you go back to the application here and you click on your new game, which you can access right over here on the left, you want to make sure you go to the new game click, which is the red one we created, and you want to make sure you go to properties. The very first one, display options. You want to make sure you take out visible at start. You don't want the red new game to be visible until somebody hovers over top of it. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example. Let's run this. So right now, as you can see, nothing. Right now you can see It's got the logo, and it's got new game, and then you hover over it, it turns red. And then when you click on it, it goes to your yellow screen, which is your next frame. So just a very simple way to make it so the user knows that he's clicking on it or she's clicking on it. You can also change the position of it, make it bigger. Like if you wanted, for instance, to take a new game and make it a little bit bigger, so that way when they get ready to click on it, the size is in their face. You can do that and still run that same frame as soon as it loads, sometime today. And now it's going to be bigger. And the opposite's exactly the same. You can do it smaller to where that it looks like it's being pressed in. A lot of game developers, they do that. They make it so it looks it's pressed in, or if there's some kind of highlight over top of it. Now, as you can see, I highlighted over it and it did not go away. So the reason for that is because we haven't told the system to delete that, to make it invisible when you're not clicking on it or when you're not hovering on it. So we want to go to the events editor, and we want to do this again with the mouse pointer over object. That's what we want to do. So negate, we're going to negate that. So if you right click that, you can go down to where it says negate, which means the opposite of what we've just done. So if the opposite is true, and we're hovering, and the mouse is not hovering over that anymore, then we want that to be invisible. We're going to switch that to make object invisible. So now if we go to run this, we're going to see that if we go over new game, it's going to be red, and if we go off of it, it's going to disappear. But what happened? Because our yellow is gone now. Now it shows nothing. How are we supposed to click on it unless we just remember where it's at? Same deal here with when the user's mouse is over that, we made it disappear. So we want to copy this, well, not copy it, but essentially do the same thing but opposite. So when the mouse is pointed over our new game, but remember we're going to right click this and we're going to negate. When the mouse is not pointed over it, we're going to make that at that point visible. So visibility, and go to make object reappear. So now if we go ahead and run this, it's going to show your new game, and if you click or hover over top of it, it's going to be red. Hover away from it, it's yellow again. So now it's an actual functioning button. And then of course we click on it, we get to the yellow screen, which will be the start of our new level. So a couple quick things here before we end on this, because the next video that I'm going to do is going to be specifically on frame number 3, which in this case is our level 1 frame. We're going to build our first level. The couple things that I wanted to go over here with you is the things that you have access to. Right now you don't see any toolbars at the very bottom, but at the very top here you'll see where it says run tools. Tools is what you're, hold on, let me find the right one here. There we are. View is where you want to go to, and you want to go to toolbars, and they have this really neat thing. You've got access to their library window. So if you're not into creating your own thing, making your own graphics, or pulling from the internet, which is where a lot of these images came from, by the way, you can go to that portion of it. It'll bring a toolbar down here, and it's going to bring your local library. Local library is going to give you backgrounds. Like you can see different types of backgrounds, buttons and pointers, which if we wanted to insert something in here like a play button. But the really cool thing that I found here is you have access to backdrops like trees. Like you could put in a tree and it's just your backdrop. It's right back here. I'm going to delete that because we don't need that for the instance of this video. But you have access to a library of items that you can create your own level. You can create your create whatever it is that you're envisioning. This is a cool program, and of course there's a whole lot more to it. So if you have any questions at all, leave it in the comments section below. If I don't know it, I will figure it out for you. Hope you've enjoyed this video, taken something out of this. Join me on the next video. We're gonna hop into level 1. We're gonna go ahead and make our first platforming level from scratch. If you found this video useful, throw me a like. Helps my channel out a whole lot, and consider subscribing for future videos. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me. See you on the next one.